Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, here on the Hump Day edition of the Yard. It's basketball media days from Mississippi State over in Birmingham. Our Jacob Bain went over to cover. We got full coverage over at genespage.com. Of course, all that content is free. One of only two media entities from the Mississippi State beat to be represented today. Very proud to be there for our men's and women's basketball coaches and players. So all full coverage over at genespage.com. You don't even have to be a member to see that content. We make it all free. And if you would, even if you're not a subscriber, if you scroll down the page, you can sign up for our newsletter, and you get some of our content delivered to your inbox about once a day. Yeah, sometimes twice, depending if it's a big day or not. But anyway, be sure and check that out. We'll talk some about what Chris Jans and Sam Purcell had to say today. A little bit later in the show, we're going to take a look at Florida. We have a top 10 list by request. You guys have had some great ideas here as of late. Appreciate that. And it's funny, sometimes people hit me up and they want to challenge me. They give me some things. Sometimes it's a little bit silly. I could have some fun with them though. I've got one pending about fruit. Like songs about fruit. I don't know if we could make them technically about fruit, but we can find some fruit in the title or perhaps the chorus. People always do the colors thing. I've done those a few times. But, I welcome the challenge. I do. Like Roy years ago hit me up for Thanksgiving and said, hey, could you do a Thanksgiving top 10? I bet you can't. Of course, I nailed it. Did. But anyway, good show today. A lot to talk about the Florida Gators. We're going to talk a lot about how the Floridas got to this point. Later into the show, we'll talk a little bit about some of these rumors about Billy Napier's job security over in Gainesville. I'm sure many of you have kind of kept up with that. And, when you're the team that's trying to pull the upset, and upset sounds kind of silly because they're 2-4 and we're 4-2, but they're the more talented team. They're playing at home. We're going to have to play well to win that football game. But, when you're the team looking to go have that impact win, anything that could potentially be a distraction to your opponent is a good thing. So we're going to talk about some of that, some things that I'm hearing, some things that we've kind of traded some notes with some of our compatriots around the league. Lots to talk about, for sure. Hey, let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company, longtime sponsors of this show. Man, we love Bulldog Burger Company, don't we? We love it. We do. There's just such consistency there, right? That's one of the reasons that I keep going back. And before they were even a sponsor of the show, I was a regular customer. And why? Because you know what? I know when I put my feet under their table, I'm going to have a great experience, in a great atmosphere, great selection, great service. Bulldog Burger Company, 3 great locations to serve you: University Drive in Stark Vegas, Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, Lake Harbor Drive in the Ridge and Flowwood area. Have the spring rolls as your appetizer. They'll make you and everybody around you better looking. We all need more of that. Find your own favorites. If you're a newbie to Bulldog Burger Company, I suggest ordering the Bulldog. I mean, you can't go wrong with the Bulldog. Just a straight-ahead rock and roll American hamburger. You can't go wrong with that. And if you ate the Bulldog from now on, you know what? You'd live life and live it more abundantly. But if you want to branch out on a wild side, let me recommend the Pimentology, add bacon, perhaps the Freshman 15, the Smokehouse, all that good stuff. For sure. And get that chocolate shake. You can ride that ride home with a smile. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. M-E-A-T. Okay, let's talk about the Florida Gators. What should we expect, Steve? Well, let's take a look back at last year. We kind of got these guys going. And that's the frustrating part of it, right? We felt like last year, I said on the show, great chance Florida comes to Starkville in week 4 with a 1-2 record. Exactly what happened. Unfortunately, we weren't able to take advantage. They get shelled by Miami 41-17. They bounce back and beat Samford 45-7. And then Texas A&M rolls into the swamp and wins 33-20. So they come in kind of a wounded team, and you look at it and say, you know what, man, they've given up a lot of points against SEC teams, or Power 4 teams, pardon me, but SEC caliber teams. Miami's got SEC caliber athletes for sure. And so even as talented as that Florida roster was, we thought, you know what, maybe we got a shot. And it felt like it for a while in that ball game. And there are a few things I want to kind of go back and look at here too. Okay, we were 1-2 coming in, as they were as well. It's a 7-7 game after one, and then they put up 21 in the second quarter to our 7. So it is a 28-14 game, and you feel like in many respects this thing may be over. But State comes out one-score game. It's 28-21. And you feel like, okay, we got a shot. And then they score late, kind of get some separation, and we just never could get caught up, and we lose Blake Shapen for the year. So they win 45-28. And again, I think in some respects people forget how competitive this game was until late. And defensively, we just kind of ran out of juice. In the game, State has 31 first downs to their 27. We ran for 240 to their 226. We had 240 yards passing and 277. Guys, we're right there with them in total offense. They had 503 yards. We had 480. We ran 90 plays. Isn't that crazy? 90 plays in that game. They ran just 64. And you look at this and think we should probably be able to dominate. But we weren't. They had some explosives that hurt us. Blake Shapen just 13 of 21 for 140 yards and a touchdown. He was sacked just once. Michael Van Buren comes in the game late, leads us on a scoring drive. Kind of got us a little bit excited about what maybe to come. He went 7 of 13, a couple sacks there. But Davin Booth, pretty big ball game here. We had a pretty good game running the football, as you guys heard, 240 yards. Davin Booth, 75 yards on 16 carries, and Johnny Daniels, 77 on 14. Kevon Lee, right? Remember him? 8 carries for 52 yards. Got hurt in this game. We didn't see him again. And Blake, 12 for 32. So a community and effort here running the football. But you look up and it's like, man, it feels like that game got away from us, and it did. And a lot of it we just kind of wore down. They bounce back the next week too, and they get UCF. It's 24-13 is your victory, is your score there, and all of a sudden, Florida's showing some signs of life. They go to Tennessee, lose in overtime, a game they probably feel like they should have won. They go to Knoxville. Tennessee, of course, a playoff team last year. But, man, you look up, it's 10-10 at the break. Ends up being an overtime game, and Tennessee gets it done. But, again, I think a lot of people felt like, well, hey, Florida was a top 10 team. We're moving in the right direction. Well, there was evidence to support that the following week as they rout Kentucky 48-30. Georgia gets them in Jacksonville, 34-20. Not totally unexpected. But then they get absolutely blasted at number 5 Texas, 49-17. And just when you feel like, hey, this thing is going to run off the rails here, they find their footing again. And they beat LSU, who was ranked 21 at the time, 27-16. And then, thankfully, a game that we all enjoyed, they beat Ole Miss 24-17. It's almost like Jackson Dart had money on the Gators. It's a crazy game. And then they blow out Florida State in Tallahassee 31-11. So you close out the regular season on a 3-game winning streak. And those were all important games. 2 ranked opponents in a rivalry game. So, yeah, that's going to get you, some positive, momentum within your fan base. And then you win the bowl game against Tulane. And so all of a sudden, you win the rivalry game, you win the bowl game, you got a couple trophies to show for the year, and you feel like, Billy got off to a rough start, but maybe we've kind of found our footing. We ended the year on a 4-game winning streak. We went 500 within the league. Maybe, just maybe, we're in the right direction. I mean, and you look at, down the stretch, other than that Texas game, they're right there in every game. Right there. No ifs, ands, or buts. Well, the positive feeling about the Billy Napier experience in Gainesville did not last very long. They open up the year. They blast Long Island, who I don't think many of us knew had a football team until this year. Well, they get them 55-0, and they should have, right? So you don't learn anything about Florida in that game. I think you learned a lot about Florida in week 2. Is Alex Golesh in South Florida march into the swamp and win 18-16. What a huge win for USF. And that's when the Bluebirds came back out. It's like, you know what? We thought we'd probably lose some conference games, maybe 3 or 4 conference games. But we certainly didn't expect to lose to South Florida, not the Bulls. But you did. And offensively, it was a real challenge. Well, then the next week, you go to Baton Rouge and Lagway throws 4 picks and you get beat 20-10 against a very anemic LSU offense. Looking back in hindsight, even if Florida just protects the football a little bit, maybe you win that game. At the time, LSU was ranked number 3 in the country. Then you got to go to Miami, number 4. You get beat 26-7. That's the only game this year that Florida hasn't scored on the first possession of the game. They didn't score into the third quarter. When the game was somewhat in favor of Miami, Miami puts them away. And that's the thing. You look at this team, they have really struggled scoring-wise in the second half. Then, out of the blue, they beat Texas. They get the big start and then really can't sustain it but do just enough on defense to win. They go to A&M last week. It's a game for a while, and again, they get started. That first quarter script, things work pretty well, but then when you have to go off script and make adjustments, the Billy Napier offense has really, really struggled. They get beat 34-17. And those are the things you look at and you kind of begin to ask yourself, it's like, what's the problem with Florida? They have recruited well, and that's kind of the scarlet letter, right? When you recruit well and you don't perform well, that only leaves one thing, coaching. Occasionally you'll have some injuries in there that could be a factor, but the reality of it is when you recruit at the level that Florida does, you should have the depth to overcome a few things when it comes to roster management. But the guys, they're 2-4. 2-4. And you can say, well, they could be 3-3. Guys, this is not what Florida expects out of their football program. Period. Florida should never be counting wins hoping to get bowl eligible. No one in the modern era of Florida Gator football, since Steve Spurrier kind of awakened the giant down there, nobody has aspired to play in the Music City Bowl in Gainesville. Just hadn't happened. There's years, maybe the quarterback gets hurt, and you've kind of got to piece it together, and your running game and defense kind of salvages the season. You're like, hey, I'm just happy to still be playing. But those are the exceptions rather than the rule. And again, you look at this Billy Napier experience. He's less than 500 overall, less than 500 in the SEC. And some people argued, well, we get Miami and Florida State as a non-conference. Well, it's not like Florida State was great last year. They've had some years in Florida where Miami wasn't so great either. So it's not like all 3 Florida teams are competing for national championships. It's not like the Florida of the 80s when you're dealing with the U and dealing with Bobby Bowden. It's a much different scenario. This should be Florida State. Absolutely. And you look up in Florida State's 0-3. Miami's playing well, but how many years has it taken Cristobal to get to this point? Florida has missed a golden opportunity. The Napier hire, at least that specific hire, not necessarily Billy, but that hire to replace Dan Mullen should have made Florida the dominant program in the state of Florida. And Billy Napier and his staff have failed at Florida. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no other way to slice it. They have failed miserably. And those are the things that I think, we talk about. If Billy Napier had come to Mississippi State, some people are like, well, I just don't know if that would have worked out. I think it may have worked out better because I think his brand of offense kind of matches our recruiting footprint. When you're in Florida, and you don't have to just go recruit nationally, but you do to a certain extent, you got to get the best quarterback you can get anywhere in the country. But you should never really have to leave Florida or maybe, the greater Atlanta area, South Georgia. You ought to be able to go out there and get some players. And they do, but they don't perform. And so when you have the best players available and you're still losing, that only means one thing. And so it's interesting, again, you look back, Billy had 3 great years. He was at UL for 4 years. They're 7-7 year one, and that's including a bowl loss. So they had a winning regular season record. Made it to the Sun Belt championship game. So that's a great year one. And then in 19, he goes 11-3, 10-1, 12-1. So you can't sit here and tell me that the resume wasn't there to say that he was ready for a Power 4 job or a Power 5 job. He absolutely was. Gets to Florida, 6-6 in 22. They dropped a bowl game to Vegas, end up with a 6-7 record. In 2023, they end up 5-7. 2024, again 8-5, and now 2-4 this year. So you're 21-23 overall in 4.5 seasons, and 5 games under 500 in the Southeastern Conference. That just won't get it done in Florida. It won't. I don't care how well you recruit. You've got to be able to go out there and compete. You've got to be able to go out there and do some good things other than just win a press conference. So that's where we are. And if you saw the press conference, Monday, I transcribed all that. There were like 2 questions about Mississippi State, a 28-minute press conference, and outside of Billy Napier's opening statement, the only mentions of Mississippi State were really about Blake Shapen and the offense. Because all the questions are not about the next game, it's about the bigger picture at Florida. The player questions, there were 2 players who were made available, and only one of them got a question about Mississippi State. Let's look at some team numbers here. All right, Florida's averaging 22.5 points a game. And remember, they had the big opening blowout that kind of skews the numbers. They're scoring 22 and giving up right at 20. If those numbers hold, State's in a good position. They've scored 134 points this year. And again, remember, 55 of that came in the first game of the year. They have 47 rushing first downs. They've given up 30. They've been pretty good against the run, and that's where we're going to have to live there. 56 first downs passing. They've given up 51, so there is some plays he made to secondary. They've gained 12 first downs by way of penalty, so we can't shoot ourselves in the foot and extend drives. But 115 first downs to 88. They've run for 825 yards. It's not a great running offense. You got to think we're 6 weeks into the season. They're averaging 120 yards a game. They've given up 790. That works out to 113 a game. So, yes, they've outrushed their opponents, but not by much. And this is a Florida offense based on the Billy Napier play-calling pedigree that should be a very good running team. They're not. It is 3 rushing touchdowns this year. Let that sink in for a second. You're 6 games in. You got 3 rushing touchdowns. You can't run the football. Brian Kelly at LSU's looking at that like, man, they've given up 7 rushing touchdowns. We've got to make that matter. So the net difference, they have outrushed their opponents by 45 yards this year. That's it, 45 yards, 725 to 680. After the lost yardage is backed out of there. I mean, and remember, they had that first game. It's crazy how much the numbers have been skewed because of that 55-0 blowout of Long Island. And just so you know, just to kind of give you the proper context here, in that game, Florida rushed for 200 yards. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. So you got 725 yards through 6 games, and 200 of it came in one game. So let's do the math, shall we? That means 525 yards. Bring out the trusty calculator here. I'm not an engineer. I'm just a meager scribe. My wife is the mathematician in the family. That works out to 105 yards a game against Power 4 competition. That's not great. That's not the Florida we know. On the passing side, it's been a little more interesting. And, of course, DJ Lagway has been beat up, so they've made him be more of a pocket passer more than a dual-threat quarterback, and that's hurt the running game. When you don't have to account for the quarterback in the running game, it makes it a lot easier to shut down the zone read. The RPO game is a lot easier to defend when you don't have the real threat of the quarterback run. Now, the passing side's been a little bit different. And, again, they're trying to make him more of a pocket passer, but the results have been mediocre in many respects. 6 games, 125 completions, and 188 attempts, 7 picks against 9 touchdowns. Now, he is completing at a high rate of 66.49%. But, almost as many interceptions as touchdowns. The numbers are skewed a little bit because of that LSU game, when things just didn't go their way. But, it's just interesting, to look at this and to think, hey, all these games have been close. Statistically, every game except for the LIU game has been close. That's one of those things you look at. And so, should this game be close? I think it will be. I think it will be. Punt kicking wise, they're consistent like just about everybody else, averaging almost 45 yards a punt. Giving up a little bit in the return game, but not a whole lot. They've made 9 out of 12 field goals. So nothing just jumps off the page special teams wise. Now, penalty wise, they've not been a team that's been penalized a lot. It's just under 6 per game. You can live with that. Their opponents have committed 47 penalties, and have mentioned many of those have extended drives. Florida is a team that likes to control time of possession. That's the staple of the Billy Napier offense, is to be able to just kind of ground and pound, but it's just over 31 minutes a game. Third down conversion, interesting. 25 of 79, so right at 31% conversion rate. That's not great. Their opponents are 31 of 86. That's just over 36%. Fourth down, 4 of 8. Possession plays hasn't exactly been a strong suit of the Florida offense. They fumbled 9 times. They've lost 3 of them. They've only forced 3 fumbles. They've recovered 2 of those. They got 9 sacks. They've allowed a dozen. Perfect in PATs. Red zone, they've been good, 18 of 19 getting scores. You'd like to get more touchdowns, just 13 of 19 on the touchdown front. But they've been really good in red zone defense, at least forcing field goals. 14 of 16 trips to the red zone have yielded points, only 8 of them touchdowns for their opponents. And I've had some technical difficulties, so bear with me here. We'll do the best we can. But, we discussed this running game a little bit too, and it's so interesting to think about, the Florida that we have known throughout our life. You had the fun and gun and things like that, but they've always been able to kind of run the football. Not really the case this year, not really the case. And so I think that's a real factor if you're State, is you want to slow down the run and force Lagway to beat you through the air. I think that's the game plan that I would employ. Now look on the receiving side. Vernell Brown's been pretty good for him. Leads the team with 27 catches. One of those went for 60, but no touchdowns. Makes me wonder a little bit about the foot speed. You know what I'm saying? Possession guy, yeah. Hayden Hansen, a tight end, has been good for them. 18 catches for 175 yards and a score. Michael Sturdivant starting to emerge a little bit. 12 grabs for him. He had a pretty good game against A&M. And then there's Dallas Wilson, a guy they flipped from Oregon late. Only played in a couple games, made his debut recently. 9 grabs, 131 yards, but 3 touchdowns. He's certainly an explosive playmaker. That's one to watch. He averages 65 yards a game, but again, there's just been 2 games. But, really the story of this team, I think in many respects, is the defense. I think most people would look at that and say, you know what, they're not rushing the passer a lot, but they've been pretty good up front, stopping the run. Florida always has linebackers. Miles Graham leads a team with 34 tackles. Also got a couple of TFLs and 4 quarterback hurries and batted down 3 passes. And, he's one of the leaders on this team. He speaks a lot in media opportunities. Bryce Thornton got 24 tackles. Also 3 quarterback hurries, a couple of fumble recoveries. Always around the football. Brandon Bett is another guy that you got to account for, number 90. Got 23 tackles this year. But as we mentioned, not a ton of sacks, but they are influencing the quarterback just a little bit. They've got 25 quarterback hurries this year. That's a decent number. You look at the sack situation, you'd like to turn more hurries into sacks, just the 9 sacks for just 51 yards. But they're not rushing the passer at the clip that Tennessee or Texas A&M is. Now, they may see this Mississippi State patchwork offensive line and say, hey, this is a get-right game for us. But if I'm Mississippi State, I'm thinking, hey, you know what, they're going to be athletic, but it's not going to be worse than what we've seen. And we certainly still feel like we should have beat Tennessee. Tennessee did beat Florida in an overtime game. So maybe this is a game that is somewhat common to that. My thinking is, and we talked about what a good job Florida has done on opening possessions. we got to survive the opening salvo. You can't get down 2 scores in this ball game. And I say that regularly just because I just don't think we're explosive enough on offense. I think we should be, and we can be. We haven't shown that yet against SEC competition. But what I think could happen in this game, in the event that State gets up early, I think that crowd is ready to quit. That crowd is ready for Billy Napier to be gone. That crowd is tired of losing football games. And I think, hey, if State's got a halftime lead, you might start seeing some people file out of the swamp. And the less people that are there, the less home field advantage they have. They begin, they throw some picks or start turning the football over, have some 3 and outs. There's going to be some boos. This is a fan base that is on the brink. And so I think in some respects, you can turn that crowd against the home team if you're able to kind of get out of the gate. You come out, you throw a couple of shots early, and I think one of the most important things with this entire game is the ability to just kind of go out there and connect on some of these big shots. You go max protect, you get Brennan Thompson and some one-on-one matchups outside the numbers. Once you get that matchup, you've got to complete the pass. Simple as that. You have to complete the pass. I think you have to establish the running game to force the safeties to creep up a little bit. I don't think there are many safeties in the country that can run foot for foot with Brennan Thompson. But if you have to play against 2 high safeties, of course, that gives them 20 yards of cushion. So you've got to establish the run early and then take some shots. And I don't think they can be predictable. I think you've got to maybe show a run look, and then you turn it into a passing opportunity there. If it's there, you've got a heavy box. You take the shot down the field, but we have to hit those. And Blake, at times, has overthrown those shots. It's tough to overthrow Brennan Thompson. There have been some other times we just drop it right there in the basket. We're going to have Blake Shapen be at his best. I think we're probably going to need one of, if not his best game, in order to beat Florida. And in order to do that, you've got to establish the running game and keep those linebackers and safeties honest. If we get into a situation where it's 3rd and long consistently, they're going to use their athleticism to absolutely influence the quarterback. And Blake at times obviously has held onto the football too long. We got to design some checkdowns and things of that nature. And again, I think Sadu's got to be a big part of this. I didn't think he was a big enough part of things against Texas A&M, and maybe that was because we had to use him to block so much. But I think you can use him in some of those scenarios where he shows block and then releases out into the pass pattern. And I think you can use their over-aggressive nature against them. They're going to come out loaded for bear. And that's the thing that I think about, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in the show, but what is the psyche of this Florida team? How do they respond if they hear, and I'm certain they have, that Billy Napier is going to be fired on Sunday, win or lose? Do you come out there and try to save your coach's job, and then you begin to ask yourself, is that an exercise in futility? If they're going to fire him anyway, why am I trying so dadgum hard? But these guys are competitors. They're not going to lay down for us. But I do think in the event that you get up on them early and then the crowd maybe begins to turn, I think it takes a little bit of vigor out of this Florida team. I think they're beaten up too. I mean, and you think about, and I mentioned this morning on the Bo Bounds show, you think about the Chris Lemonis effect, right? I don't think our players fully understood maybe how dark the cloud was over them until it was removed. You're out there every day. You're fighting for your coach. They all love Lemonis. And then once Chris was terminated, the team played a lot looser. So all the pressure is really on Florida. And so I think you have to ride the wave of that and not give those players any sense of confidence. And again, you think about that collective psyche of a team. If they're used to going down and scoring the first possession, again, 5 out of 6 times, against some really good teams, and you get a first drive stop and then turn that into a first drive score, then all of a sudden, just collectively, I don't care who you are or where you're from, you start thinking, well, maybe we're just not prepared for this. Maybe it's just not our day. It's just human nature. There are some people, obviously, that thrive in periods of adversity. But when you are used to kind of having your way early, because they script some things out to kind of get Lagway comfortable, when all of a sudden he's uncomfortable, and as we saw at A&M, he had the big, I hate to call it a meltdown, but he had kind of a temper tantrum on the sidelines. And so that's the leader of your team. And so when you can get into his head a little bit, that in turn gets into the huddle. When you have a tight quarterback, people on offense play tight. That's why I think it's important for State to get some, to get some touches on him. You got to be able to influence him a little bit. And if we can play him like we did Marcel Reed, I think we've got a really good chance in this ball game, because I don't think that Florida has anywhere close to the same rushing attack that Texas A&M does. I mean, you saw what Owens and Moss did, and that's, people have kind of referenced that. Again, I think some people aren't giving A&M enough credit. A&M might be the most improved team in the Southeastern Conference. Now, you remember about 7-8 games into the schedule last year, they had put themselves in a scenario where they could control their own destiny, and they didn't follow through with that. But if you look at them this year defensively, I just think they're much, much better than they were last year. And real quickly, let's look at a couple of stats from Florida in relation to the rest of the league. You look at total offense. There's 16 teams in this league. They're 13th in offense. State a few spots ahead of them, but 13th. And you look at rushing offense, right? We're going to look at raw yards here. 14th, and only 35 yards away from dead last. The team that's dead last, obviously, is LSU, a team that Brian Kelly was certain could run the football. Didn't you see the last play? But when you begin to work through this aspect of it, guys, State has outrushed Florida by almost 400 yards this year in the same number of games. Now, one could argue they've played a little more difficult schedule, and I think that's probably fair. But it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy when you can't run the football, and when you can't run the football, then you can't run your play action stuff. Then all of a sudden, the linebackers kind of begin to tee off, and then you've got a quarterback that's broken out back there that really can't improvise the way that he normally could because he's less than 100%. And so I do think it's going to be a very close game. I'll give you my final thoughts on Friday, but there are a lot of people who have this game 9.5, 10 points. I don't think Florida will cover. I think Mississippi State will cover, and I've almost convinced myself that Mississippi State's going to win this game. All right, time for our close with Blair Player of the Day. Always important, right? The close with Blair Player of the Day. I know many of you were just kind of waited with bated breath to hear who it's going to be this week. And it's going to be Ethan Pulliam. And I'll tell you why after we talk about Blair. Visit closewithblair.com for all your mortgage needs. Let me give you his phone number, 601-500-2344, 601-500-2344. Save that number in your phone as Mortgage Guy, because you never know when you may need him. Life may throw you a curveball. Maybe you need to refinance. Maybe you need to buy a new home. 25 years of experience in the mortgage lending origination industry. Nobody stays in a meat grinder of an industry like that for 20 plus years without knowing how to get things done. They don't keep Blair around just because he brings the donuts on Saturdays. It's just not how it works. Blair is a closer, thus the name closewithblair.com. He structured your loan to give you the best chance to get an approval through underwriting. So whether you're looking for your first home, your next home, your retirement home, or perhaps that game day condo, which could prove to be more affordable than you think, Blair Chandler, the only name to know. Visit closewithblair.com today. Okay. I think this is going to be a one-score game. Either way. That's what I think today. I think winning the battle of field position is going to be the difference in this game in many respects. I think this is a Florida offense that is very, very reliant on the explosive play, and they have been difficult to come by. So the more plays that you make them run, the better chance you have of them messing it up. play some cloud, make them catch a ball underneath, make tackles in space. And so those punts to flip the field, give them the long field. And Ethan Pulliam, I've seen some people talk about, he may be on track to be your SEC punter of the year. I saw E yesterday. Looks great. Put on some weight. But this is a guy that's got a pro leg. And these are the games where that matters. We always talk about the hidden yards in the game. This is part of it. And I think Ethan Pulliam, number one, has the mental fortitude to be a field flipper in this game. I think we're going to need that. I hope we don't punt much at all. But when we do, I think he can be a real weapon in this game. And I think the more yards that you make those guys get, again, the more times you make them snap it, right? Make them play the game. Don't have busts in the secondary. We've been very fortunate in that respect this year. And again, when you don't have that mobile quarterback that can really make you pay when things break down, I think it makes it a little bit easier for defensive backs. And so, again, we want to get some pressure on them, but at the same time, too, when things bog down for us a little bit, I think we have a real weapon in Ethan Pulliam that could really impact this game. So he is our Close with Blair player of the game. Okay. Time for today's top 10 list, brought to you by Calido Guitars, Calido Guitars.com, a Mississippi State-owned and operated guitar shop out of Lake Jackson, Texas. Next time you're in the greater Houston area, you owe it to yourself, maybe swing by and check out their expansive showroom. If you can't make it down there, I'm going to still give you a promo code that will help. Doesn't matter if you use it in person, if you use it on the phone, or you use it online. And when you use it, that's going to identify you to them as a Mississippi State person and a Boneyard listener. That's going to entitle you to some savings. By using promo code BSR, you get 10%. Right out of the gate, 10%. Just the Ken Folks discount, right? Then you get no shipping, and you get no sales tax unless you live in the state of Texas. And then they'll make a 5% donation to the Bulldog Excellence Fund based on your purchase price. Man, what a great incentive to do business with a Bulldog business, right? I love my Steve Vai signature guitar, and I suspect you will love yours too. And I don't mind if you get the same one as me. It makes no difference to me. I don't need to, be a gatekeeper. I love mine with that monkey grip. It's so clean. It sounds clean. It is clean. It is a beautiful instrument. Find a beautiful instrument that fits your style, whether it's an acoustic guitar, a 12-string, a classical, an electric guitar. It doesn't matter if you're a beginner or a pro. They've got something in your price range that'll fit your needs. I absolutely love it, and I'm so glad that we have partnered with them. And I'm glad that they've begun to get some sales from this too. I love getting the testimonials like we did earlier this week from the gentleman in Mississippi that got the Joe Satriani original and is extremely excited about it. And remember, they even put some 10s on there at no additional cost. These people want your business. A lot of people are out there that asking for your business. They deserve it. A little blip there. Again, I don't know. I've rebooted the computer, everything. But you're not going to have those issues with Calido Guitars. Be sure and check it out today. Calido Guitars, the only name to know when it comes to stringed instrument sales within the Mississippi State family. Okay. I get a little aggravated sometimes with when things. I just want things to work. You know what I mean? I just want things to work. You pay for things, you want them to work. I've been using this program for a long time. But anyway, we're having some gremlins in the machine, so we'll do the best. We'll make it. Okay, kids, we'll make it. Top 10 list, again, by Calido Guitars. We had a request from Chad Gomillion, an avid listener to the show. Chad, thanks so much for your support. Said he really enjoyed the Monday Boneyard Top 10 and kind of gave us a spin off that. He said, how about top 10 rock songs without the title in the first line? And I took it a step further, Chad. How about top 10 rock songs without the title anywhere in the lyrics? Yeah, I think that gives us some interesting songs to talk about. And I will admit that maybe some of these are ranked, especially in the back half, a little bit off. You may disagree, and that's okay. But so again, top 10 rock songs without the title anywhere in the lyrics. So there's no Girls, 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 right? There's no Unskinny Bop. There's no Round and Round, right? Because a lot of songs, the chorus is the title. But here we go. Top 10 rock songs without the title anywhere in the lyrics. And there's a bunch of Led Zeppelin songs, just so you know. And it's a little bit of a hint right there. So number 10, Iron Maiden, The Trooper. Yeah, The Trooper. You know that opening riff. You've heard it a million times. The Trooper is never mentioned at any point in the song. Number 9, this may be a bit of a surprise. Many of these may be. And this one probably should be higher on the list, but I kept thinking of other ones that I liked. And it's a little bit overplayed, but it's a classic. It's Metallica's Enter Sandman. Yeah, they never say the title. Number 8, and this is probably no surprise, and I've had some Pearl Jam fans that have said, Steve, you kind of sleep on this song. And I don't mean to. I love the song. And little trivia here, it was supposed to be on Pearl Jam 10. Yeah, that's one of the reasons it was kind of released later as a single. The only reason that it didn't make it into the top on the album 10 is because Eddie Vedder wasn't quite satisfied with the lyrics, and yet we're talking about Yellow Ledbetter, the cousin of Marcel, Eugene, Clovis, Newdale, Odell, and all those guys. That's your number 8 track, Pearl Jam's Yellow Ledbetter. Number 7, absolutely love this song. I think most people would agree this may be the quintessential Smashing Pumpkins song. Many of you may disagree. Maybe. But I remember the very first time I put on Melancholy and Infinite Sadness, the double album from the Smashing Pumpkins. This is the song right out of the gate. And I remember telling my wife, I said, Billy Corgan is back, and man, he seems really, really angry. Yeah, it's Bullet with Butterfly Wings. Absolutely love that track. Think you guys will know it well, because the world is a vampire. It's true. Number 6, going back several years, my distant cousin, Robbie Robertson, a part of this band. God bless the soul of Levon Helm. Great track. It's the band, and the song is The Weight. Take a load off Fanny, take a load for free, and put the load right on me. Yeah, there you go. The Weight from the band. Number 5, I actually jammed Guns N' Roses' version of this yesterday. Got an earworm, put it in, and heard, Axl say, give me a little volume on this one. It's the original Nazareth, Hair of the Dog. Now, the chorus of this is Now You're Messing with a S.O.B., right? They wanted to title that album S.O.B., but the record company said, no, we can't do that. But Hair of the Dog from Nazareth, a song that a lot of people have covered. Number 4, another classic. And again, very interesting lyrics, and there were a lot of people on the religious right that were really upset about this song when it came out. It's Sympathy for the Devil, Rolling Stones, number 4. That's your number 4 track, the Rolling Stones, Sympathy for the Devil. I don't think there actually is any true sympathy for the devil, but it's a very provocative title, to say the least. Number 3, a song you know well. It was actually the title track off the second album from Black Sabbath. It talks a lot about being paranoid, but they never mentioned the word paranoid. So there you go. Number 2, and a song that the world knows. I recently saw, I guess it's a TikTok video, but I saw it and I shared it with my family. And you guys know what a huge Queen fan I am. And again, Freddie Mercury was a big part of my life early on because, I'm not going to get too political with all this kind of stuff. But there were a lot of people, of course, because Freddie didn't live the way they did, were very judgmental of him. And especially growing up in a very religious family, people are like, hey, you can't listen to that. That guy's this and that guy's that. I just know that I love the music of Queen. Like I didn't get into what their politics were, or what they were, or who they lived with, or who they slept with. That stuff just didn't matter to me. And you know what? It still doesn't matter to me. I just enjoy art for the sake of art. And I was so jacked, man, to bring my kids to see Bohemian Rhapsody at the movies so they could experience the majesty of Freddie on the big screen. It was great. And that's your number 2 track. And I anytime that I find these covers of Bohemian Rhapsody, I share them with the family. Just because of the fact that, there's a lot of people out there that are super talented. And there was like this, I guess, a flash mob somewhere over in Europe. And people were across the street of this courtyard. And next thing you know, they break into song. And I shared both parts of it with the family. And I said, Freddie really did make the world sing. And that's what's so crazy to think that nearly 50 years later, people are still planning these very extravagant performances to perform Bohemian Rhapsody because it's such a fun song, right? Where else would you know Scaramouche from? Number 2, Bohemian Rhapsody. Probably should have been number 1, but anytime that we can talk about Black Dog from Led Zeppelin, I want to. I think that is one of the greatest rock songs of all time. I think it's got the best opening line of a song ever. My personal opinion, you may disagree. I'm not going to even tell you the line. You can go figure it out yourself. I just begin to think about the construction of that song and the Jimmy Page work, and of course John Bonham on the drums and Robert Plant. Just a tremendous vocal performance. Black Dog from Led Zeppelin, your number 1 track. And again, Chad, thanks so much for the suggestion. You guys have some great ideas from time to time. Sometimes they're clunkers, and sometimes I just don't feel like I can do it justice. And so I give myself a little time to kind of dig into the catalog a little bit. But Chad sent this to me today. And I said, you know what, I like the idea. Let's do it today. So here we are. So Chad, I hope I did you justice here. And certainly appreciate you listening to the show. Go find yourself a guitar at Kalido Guitars. And maybe you could one day be on the top 10 list. If you got suggestions, send them to Roy Samanti at Dogmatic67. That's DAWGMATIC67. If you hit me up on Twitter, I can generally see it, but I get a lot of notifications, so sometimes I miss them. And so Roy is kind of the keeper of the list. And you can find our great list on Spotify under that same handle. Again, that's Dogmatic67. Next segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart, a Starkvillian institution. Man, we love Campus Bookmart, and why do we love them? Because they have what we want, right? We want more Mississippi State merch. We want jackets. We want sweatshirts. We want hoodies. We want T-shirts. And sometimes, ladies, you can even find a fun little maroon and white dress there at Campus Bookmart. But also, too, you get cowbells, and you can get gift ideas and everything you need to detail out your fan cave. And, of course, with graduation coming up, we always want to recommend those diploma frames. What a great gift, a timeless gift for the Mississippi State graduate in your family. You can be the preferred parent, aunt, uncle, or grandparent by go ahead and getting them an official Mississippi State diploma frame from Campus Bookmart. If you can't make it to town, visit them on the World Wide Web at campusbookmart.net. And by being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays. That is BSR. That stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. That gets you free shipping on all orders over $75. Any order less than $75, absolutely incomplete. Okay. Basketball news right out of the gate. Guy Chol is out for the year. And that's not something we were expecting to learn today. Jacob Bain went over to Birmingham last night, stayed the night, went to media days today, got up bright and early. Went over there, had the complimentary breakfast, of course, and spent some time talking to Chris Jans and some players, as well as Sam Purcell and some players. We got most of that content already up at genespage.com for free. But that was something we had to kind of get right on. And I want to apologize to the guy and his family. Dave Murray loved Dave to death. In his hurry, Dave misspelled Chol in the article. So we had to get that fixed. You may not have seen it, but sometimes we're working hard and we make a mistake, especially with something that's a little more unique like that. But the least we can do is get somebody's name spelled correctly. And so we do apologize for that. But that's beside the point. It's a very difficult day, and we know that State's a little thin at the 5. We didn't expect Guy to play a whole lot this year. But the reality of it is that was a player we were expecting to be in the rotation, and now he's not around. And so that's probably the headline of today. I want to go over a few things that both Chris Jans and Sam Purcell said today, just to kind of keep you abreast of what's happening if you hadn't had a chance to read yet. And it's the thing. We approach basketball media days the same way that we do football. I mean, I think it's so important to be there, even though it's a local media, because you never know what other people may ask, and they may stumble upon something. So anyway, that's just kind of part of the deal, But anyway, I'm going to give you part of the opening statement, I guess. And I think we need to make a big deal about this. We've been at 3 consecutive NCAA tournaments. Okay, there was a time that we would have done anything to make the tournament. We've made it 3 in a row. And I understand if some is good, more is better. But the reality of it is it's 4th year under Chris Jans. And he's had people that have come at him every year that he's been here. He's still here. From the opening statement, a couple things. In terms of our team, like all the other coaches are talking about, we got 15 players. It's the smallest roster I've ever had as a head coach at any level. It's new territory for me that way. I've been accustomed to having a lot of bodies in practice. It's caused us to change how we organize our practices and certainly run our practices. We have 4 guys that were in uniform last year, 1 starter and 2 in the rotation. That means we have 11 new players. Of those 11, 4 of them are high school players and 6 of them were transfers. Then we have an international player as well. You're worried about the math there for a second, but it worked out. We're still trying to find our identity, to be honest with you. I remember a few weeks ago struggling internally about who our team is going to be and how we're practicing. I got to believe now, looking back, talking to other coaches, that's a similar feeling that's going on around the country. End of quote there. And I think that's part of it too. With the reduced rosters, with the transfer portal, everybody is kind of dealing with the same thing. Now, there are a few teams, obviously, that return more pieces than us, and they're going to be picked to do really well. But this is kind of the new normal, especially on the basketball side. You're going to return a lot of your core guys in football and baseball. Basketball is a much different dynamic, as you guys have seen. We've had some guys transfer in, not do much, and transfer out. We've had some high school guys come in, not do much, and transfer out. And there's some guys out there that have a Mississippi State official issue hoodie out there that are on their second, third schools. I mean, that's just the nature of things, and that's not to be critical of anybody. That's just kind of how things work. All right, back to Jan's comments. You're just not quite there yet. Your personality hasn't quite formed yet as a basketball team because you just haven't had the necessary time and reps and adversity that you're comfortable with, having so many other players back from years past. We're excited about the season. End of quote. Chris, we are too. But I think it's important for our fans to be a little more measured in our expectations. Like I see some things on social media, and irrational exuberance at times can lead to some disappointment that maybe is not necessary, right? Is this a tournament team? I fully believe that it is. We're picked 10th by some people in the league. You got Josh Hubbard back, obviously a first-team All-SEC selection, one of the most prolific scorers in the conference. When he's on, we're going to be on. When he's off, we're going to have somebody step up. And when he's off, those are games we're going to have to kind of grind through because, you saw it sometimes last year. Some teams kind of neutralized Josh a little bit, and somebody else had to kind of step up. And I think that's where we're really talking about developing an identity because we just don't know who those second, third scorers are going to be. You go back to Mississippi State's final game of the year in the tournament. Without Josh Hubbard, I don't even know that we score. I mean, Keyshawn pitched in a little bit. Now he's at Auburn. So we're trying to establish an identity, but I think it's important for our fans to be very realistic, expect to make the tournament, expect to win a game in a tournament, but don't be shocked if we end up on the 8-9 line again. Don't be shocked. One of the things that I thought about, and we get a kind of a lengthy answer here from Coach Jans, I really felt like because of his time coaching in junior college that he would be very prepared year to year to kind of mold a roster. It makes perfect sense, right? Because in JUCO, you're never really building anything. It's all about this season. And so Jans has a lot of experience with that. He was asked about that at Media Day. Somebody asked him about when the portal starts and that sort of stuff. So Chris says, yeah, I'd hear to why you complain. Nobody pays attention to it anyway. But it's certainly been a hot topic for years now since the portal has become part of our landscape. For me personally, I've been championing the weekend after the Sweet 16. I think that's a perfect time for it to open. Where there's only 4 teams that are left playing, boo-hoo to those 4. Amen, Chris. They're playing in the Final Four. They've got to be able to get in the portal a little bit, still prepare for their team. I'm sure they would take all the inconvenience. They would all take the inconvenience. I believe when it started 2 years ago before the NCAA tournament, that was a travesty in my opinion. I get there's a lot of talking points that comes with it. I can't imagine a better sweet spot than the Monday after the Sweet 16 weekend, even for the coaches and the staffs and their families. When you lose that last game of the year, which all but one of us do that are in the NCAA tournament, you don't get to take a breath at all. You don't even get to internalize what happened. It's very emotional. You don't have a choice. You better jump in the portal, both feet, both hands, every part of your body to be able to do what you got to do because it's very time sensitive. I think it gives the players time to decide if they want to go in or not. It gives the coaches time to recruit, if you will, some of the players that are on the fence. I know there will be people that will say, well, we need to know, right? It's going to give time for coaches to get behind the scenes and do what they do. Let's be honest, that's going on anyway. I tell our coaches all the time that everybody is in the portal. That has to be your mentality regardless if they're officially paperwork-wise in the portal or not. Again, that's just my opinion. I agree with him 100%. And that's one of the things that I think kind of what Coach Jans is saying here kind of echoes some of the arguments on the football side too, right? Because people are like, well, it's unfair for the teams that are in the football playoff that the portal opens while they're still playing and preparing. Well, I agree with Coach. Boo-hoo, right? We want parity in college sports. If you're already one of the top teams in the country, you're not going to be as reliant on a portal as others. Now, you may be a little bit hesitant too because some guys will go jump in the portal and they want to go take visits and not help you go win a championship. I understand that. And I think that flies in the face of a lot of these arguments that we used to have. Right? There were so many people that said, well, bowl games are meaningless. And these guys are transferring because they don't want to play in a glorified exhibition. Because they wouldn't do it if they were in a playoff. Well, then what happened? We institute and expand the playoff, and guess what? They still went and jumped in the portal. Now, of course, in basketball, you've got a smaller roster, so it's more difficult to handle that level of attrition. But I think Coach Jans is onto something. Do it the Monday after the Sweet 16 game. There's only a handful of teams still playing, and everybody else can go ahead and start building for next year. And that's not to say that you, the privileged few that are still playing, can't work the portal. You can't. I think really what their beef is they don't want to lose players to the portal. And the chances are you're not going to lose a difference maker, but you may lose some depth, and that may impact the game, right? But there's no perfect formula. There's no way that we're going to make everybody happy. But I think doing it after Sweet 16 weekend makes the most sense because you make most of the people happy. Same thing in football. This new portal time, perfect. Most perfect thing we've had, right? Let's look over on the Sam Purcell side of things. And, again, they're picked 10th in the league by some people. Again, a team that we expect to make the tournament. Going to be interesting, And, again, it's a new team. You got a few players back, but it's a new team. And I think that's the thing that we miss, right? That's the thing that we're just kind of waiting to see. Because it's like you got to see Victoria Vivian's year after year after year get better and better, better, better. And so you became very comfortable with that group, Blair Schaefer and Tierra McCowan. I mean, that group kind of grew up together. And we as a fan base kind of grew into a women's basketball fan base too. Right, we began to kind of get behind them because we watched them grow and mature. So Sam was first asked, and this is in our little small media briefing, asked about the freshmen. First and foremost, they are 2 feet in, and that's really all you can ask for. They obviously chose Mississippi State because they believe in the vision and because of the past success. Also, I told them I don't play labels. If you look at my track record, you can see that I've started freshmen, but you have to come in and elevate. They came in as a top 10 recruiting class, but I want them to finish inside the top 10 by the time they're done. End of quote. And that's music to our ears, right? Incredible, right? You want this class to be a defining class, and certainly you want them to kind of hang on, and spend some time here at Mississippi State. He was asked about a couple of returning players, too, and, of course, you can go read this in its entirety. Everyone knows about Sanaya King and Destiny McFall, but tell us a little more about the other people in your backcourt. Iowa Fane was a junior college All-American, and she is a joy to coach. That's a name we should know. Jelia Lampley is going to be a big-time player. I cannot say enough about her parents. Her mom is a high school coach, and she knows the game very well. She's long and lanky. And we also have Chandler Prater. somebody we know. Most importantly, Trayana Crisp, she had a lot of success last year. I think she scored 20 against Louisville. The young lady had a great game. And if I can get everything out of every individual player, we have a chance to be a magical team. How fun is that to hear? End of quote. Right? That's a fun part of this. And asking a little bit about, what do you need to do to get deeper in the tournament? Sam says, it is funny because I was talking with our strength and conditioning coach, and she told me that we're not taller than last year, but we are longer wingspan-wise, and we are faster. That makes me excited because the dunk is not prevalent in the women's game, so we need that length to alter shots and finish at the rim. It's the longest we've ever been. End of quote. I don't know that he actually answered the question, but it was an interesting anecdotal response, to say the least. All right, final segment of the show brought to you by the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. It's the best place to stay in the Golden Triangle where you're bringing a large group to town. And you know what? You should. You've always thought about it. You dreamed about it. It's time for us to be about it. We've done it. We had a blast, and you will too. Such a great place to stay. 6 bedrooms, 2 baths, soon to be 3. Plenty of parking, full-service kitchen. Wet bar, back porch area, fire pit area, plenty of room for everybody to spread out and have some very meaningful conversation. Just 5 minutes away from the Mississippi State campus. You can do your tailgating right there, right? And how many times do you go get an Airbnb and there's not enough room for everybody to park? No worries there. It's the old renovated country club out past the Highlands off 182. You owe it to yourself and to your friend group or your family to get together under one roof. Google the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. When you do, their Facebook page auto-populates. You can peruse all the pictures of all the amenities available to you and your guest. And some booking options pop up too. Airbnb, VRBO. But if you want to save a few bucks, I can help you. Book through the Evolve website. Use promo code BSR10. That's Beautiful Steve Robertson, the number 10, BSR10. Gets you 10% off your stay. Be the linchpin in your friend and or family group and begin to check availability today and plan a once-in-a-lifetime type experience just to get everybody together and make some memories together. We stayed there for New Year's. Wonderful, wonderful experience. You owe it to yourself and to those you love to do it yourself. The Stark Vegas Clubhouse, the best place to stay in the Golden Triangle. All right. It's taken me forever to get this show recorded. We've had some technical difficulties, but also, too, we had another baseball commitment. In the 2027 class, Kyle Meckage, outstanding player, consensus top 10 player in the country, is one of the best outfielders, but also, too, a left-handed pitcher. He is a true two-way guy. And as college baseball rosters shrink, guys that can help you in multiple spots are becoming more of a commodity. So you're seeing a lot of two-way guys. You see it with Tanner Bellevue this year. He's a guy that can play corner spots but also pitch. Noah Sullivan, I guess, is a guy that's been a DH and also pitch a little bit too in the midweek. Meckage is a guy that is one of the better outfielders in this class, but is also a recruitable athlete as a pitcher. So great pickup. And last time I checked, like the average rating of players over at Perfect Game, for what that's worth, Mississippi State's got the highest in the country. We're back like we've never been back. You know what I'm saying? You go back to those early days of Ron Polk when Mississippi State was really the first true national recruiter. Kind of getting back to that. You're seeing Brian O'Connor and those guys but kind of flex their muscles a little bit. And the consistent refrain that I hear from interviewing these recruits is the relationship with the staff, that they have a plan for their lives on and off the field. You couple that with their ability to develop players and get them into AA quicker than maybe most college programs around the country. And then you think about what we've already got, right? The grandest cathedral in the history of college baseball, the best player amenities in the country. And so I think in many respects, as I've shared with you guys before, we have a coach with a staff that has the recruiting acumen that mirrors our financial, emotional, and facility commitment to baseball. Yep. True story. All right, I want to talk about a couple other things, too. There's some reports have made the rounds, and we've talked a little bit about all of this distraction, right? All of this stuff that's happening in Gainesville are maybe not happening in Gainesville. A lot of people are attributing some things to clandestine sources, and we do that too, right? We do. But not all sources are created equal. This discussion about some Bull Gators having a meeting and kind of imposing their will upon the Florida Athletic Administration, I'm told that didn't happen. Now, I think, and this is just my opinion, I think there are some people that are trying to kind of throw their weight around a little bit, and they've maybe perhaps leaked some things to the media in an effort to kind of curry favor within the fan base and kind of lead a little bit of a revolt, kind of a Greg Schiano type thing they had in Tennessee. But nevertheless, Mississippi State can use this. It is a distraction. It is something the players are aware of. It is something that Billy Napier is aware of. And as he said in Monday's press conference, he goes, it's what we signed up for. We understood from the beginning the expectation is to win. Now, his buyout is maybe a little more manageable than people think. If memory serves me correct, it's $21 million, which is a ton of money. But Florida's got a ton of money. And Florida is a baseball and football crazy school. Of course, they won an AFL championship in men's basketball last year. Florida likes to be good at everything. And they should. They got one of the largest athletic budgets in the country. But they also have some very dedicated donors. And so, based on what I remember, it's 50% of that $21 million is due within 30 days. And then the rest of it is paid out in installments, like at 12.5% until the full balance is paid. So, I guess it's like a 4-year plan. I think that's correct. That's probably a little more manageable than people realize. Of course, a lot's changed. But there's a lot of people out there, obviously, that are, caretakers of their favorite athletic programs. They're invested. And I think one of the things that we're seeing, and we discussed this on Monday's show, with 8 FBS openings, people are basically letting their donors and fans know that we're not going to sit back and just wait for these things to fall apart. You've got one portal now. So you don't have the benefit of, okay, we got to put a staff together and then we'll fix it in the spring. Not anymore. Along those lines, too, is if people don't come to games, they don't buy concessions. If people don't come to games, they're not helping your community. They're not helping the greater Gainesville businesses and hotels and restaurants and things of that, and those people give money. So they're negatively impacted when people begin to check out on football. So, no matter what Scott Strickland is thinking, and we don't know what Scott's thinking, we don't. But there are a lot of people that have a lot to say. And a lot of things that are said may not be rooted in fact. That doesn't change the fact that it becomes a very visible and valuable distraction for the Gator football team because they don't know what to believe either. They don't know. And if I'm Billy Napier, who do I trust? If Scott Strickland's telling me one thing, and I've got a good relationship with him and he hired me, but I also understand he has people he has to answer to. And so I begin to kind of think about that aspect within the Florida football complex right now. Like there's some reports out there that some guys in Florida are already looking for a soft place to land, and that may be true. That probably is the right decision, even if what we're hearing right now is not 100% factual. And so, yes, it becomes a distraction for the players, but I think it also becomes a distraction for the coaches. And then you begin to think about that aspect of it. I've got a wife. I've got kids. I've got a family. I've got a mortgage I've got to pay. I've got my career to take care of. So this is a good thing for Mississippi State. Now, that's not to say that they may not rally the troops, but you begin to kind of ask yourself, if you're Billy Napier and you have underperformed, and he has, is this the delaying the inevitable? Does a win over Mississippi State change anything in the minds of Florida Gator fans? I would suggest no. You've already got 4 losses. the best that you can do is go 8-4 and then maybe win a bowl game. And so you have another season similar to last year. And last year felt like a great thing after having back-to-back losing seasons. And if you're Scott Strickland, you kind of have to ask yourself, kind of the whole Jeremy Foley mentality, right? Is what has to be done eventually is better off being done now. And Jeremy Foley still casts a big shadow in Gainesville. He's still the AD emeritus, and I'm not saying that he's involved in day-to-day operations, but a lot of donors know who Jeremy Foley is. They have his phone number. They can pick up the phone and say, hey, Jeremy, we need you to kind of step in here. Now, I haven't heard of Foley overstepping and stepping on Scott Strickland's toes, but the reality of it is those people have an audience with Jeremy. And Jeremy obviously has the ear of Scott Strickland. I have been told that Foley has supported Scott throughout everything. But the reality of all this thing goes, and I'd love at some point to know the full story about the Dan Mullen thing. It didn't make a lot of sense. Dan Mullen goes out there and puts together a couple of good years and gets them to the SEC title game, and then a year later, you're kind of at the end of a talent cycle. You have some injuries, and then he's fired even before the season is over. And then you look at the grace that Billy Napier has been provided. It kind of makes you scratch your head a little bit, right? Because Scott Strickland hired Dan Mullen too. It wasn't like Scott Strickland inherited Dan Mullen. He took Dan Mullen from Mississippi State. And again, I don't hold that against Scott. I know many of you do. But Dan was going to leave anyway. Even if Florida hadn't got involved, he was headed to Tennessee to be the head football coach for John Curry. And, of course, that coaching search eventually cost John Curry his job. And he's part of the burn tree too. All of those guys are very well connected. They throw each other some work, I guess you could say, from time to time. But I think it's important for our people to fully understand what's happening in Florida is beneficial to state no matter what happens on Sunday. And if you're Billy Napier and you wake up on Saturday and you're thinking, I may get fired tomorrow, win or lose, how does that impact play calling? How does that impact game planning? The wives hear these things. What's the home life like? I mean, think about it if it was you, right? I've been in these situations before. I remember when I was in retail with a Fortune 500 company, and there was a big shift. There was a big change in middle management. And, word kind of gets around that this person's being demoted, this person's being demoted. And they had to make room for those people. And I was affected by that. Turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to me because it enabled me to get out of retail management for a while, but and have weekends to myself. But when those things happen, you don't ever know from one day to the next. And I can tell you, it's a sinking feeling, man, when you don't feel like that you have control of your own future. It's true. It's somebody else out there, that a middle manager up there that didn't do a good job, may be demoted, and then your family is impacted. And so if you think about, those assistant coaches on Billy Napier's staff, it's like, hey, we haven't gotten the job done, and these people are out here allegedly, these donors are throwing their weight around trying to get Billy out of here. I have to think about what's best for me and my family. And that's bigger than a football game. And so the truth of the matter is, I have felt all along this is going to be a difficult game for State because we're playing the more talented team on the road. As we discuss week in and week out throughout the year on the Boneyard, you never know what shape your opponent's going to be in when you finally get to them on the schedule. Now, we knew going into the year Billy Napier was on the hot seat. Little did we know that just days before we get on a plane to Gainesville, Florida, that there are some rumors out there, allegedly, attributed to some sources with knowledge of the situation, that the Napier era is about to come to an end. And I don't know that I believe it or not. I think if Mississippi State wins the game on Saturday, I think Scott Strickland's probably got to make a move. If they win the game, I think it's going to be just a matter of time before they lose enough games to possibly be not bowl eligible. And that's the thing I think you have to think about if you're Scott is, what's left? Like, what could Billy Napier do to instill confidence in himself and his coaching staff the rest of this season. Again, you're 2-4 right now. Mississippi State comes in this weekend. Let's say you get that win. You're 3-4. Then you have the Jacksonville. That looks like a loss. It's a rivalry game. You never know for sure. But let's say you drop that one. All of a sudden, you're 3-5. Best you can hope for is 7-5. And then you still have a road trip to Kentucky, which is, from a talent standpoint, should always favor Florida. But, having to go up there, and it's a weird environment. Then you got a road trip to number 5 Ole Miss, and then you get a home date with Tennessee, and then a rivalry game. There is a very realistic possibility that this team is going to win 4 or 5 games at a maximum. And I think 5-7 was the over/under beginning of the year. I think most people settled at 5-7. That's not Florida football. And their fans are not going to put up with that. They're not going to be happy to go to Liberty Bowl or the Music City Bowl. Nobody in Gainesville, Florida has ever aspired to go to a Tennessee Bowl. All due respect to those bowl games and the people that rep them. We got some people that we love that are Mississippi State people that are affiliated with those bowl games. And after what we've been through the last couple of years, we'd love to go to those bowl games. But we're also not similarly situated with Florida. Florida, of course, has won national championships. And they're eager to get back to that. And so Jeff Levy, I think, is smart. Jeff didn't say much on a teleconference today. Jeff has been, I think, very candid, but also, too, just really talk more about his team. I think if you're Jeff, you just go quietly, go about your business, and you go to Florida, and you play your game and worry about your team. And then things work out the way they work out. Let's take a quick look at the SEC availability report. Of course, this will be updated a few times between now and game day. The first report of the week is out. And obviously, there's not a lot of surprises if you're Mississippi State fans, if you've kept up with us at all. We have done our best to kind of keep you guys abreast of what we're hearing and what we think. And all of that, I think, is important. But Fluff Bothwell is out. Jeff Levy said on Monday that he was doubtful. We all knew that. We're not holding that against Jeff. And, of course, Will Whitson and Blake Steen have been out for some time now. And now offensive lineman, backup center Brennan Smith is out. And, of course, as long as Cannon Boone's able to play without any problems, it's not an issue. Questionable is Isaac Smith and Albert Reese. And, of course, we'll get an update later in the week on their status. As Levy said on Monday, we'd like for them to get through a Wednesday practice because, Thursday is just kind of a quick practice and Friday's a walkthrough and you get on a plane. So we'll see. But again, I as much as I love Isaac Smith, I think we could probably get by with Tony Mitchell playing the star position. Getting Albert Reese back, I think, is more important. I am told things are trending positively with Albert Reese to play on Saturday. It's got to continue to get better. And if you look at the Florida availability report, and of course I have not looked extensively at the history of this, to see how many of these guys have missed games, and we'll do that between now and Friday. But they currently have 6 players listed as out. Running back Trayon Webb, edge L.J. McCray, defensive back Aaron Gates, running back Duke Clark, defensive back Dijon Johnson, defensive lineman Caleb Banks. Questionable. And, of course, some of these guys will play and some of them won't. And if they do play, they're perhaps not 100%. Defensive back Jordan Castile. Running back Jacoby Jackson. And we talked about this Florida running game hadn't been great. Well, you got a lot of running backs banged up. Defensive back Cormani McClain. Defensive lineman Brian Taylor Jr. Offensive lineman Devin Manuel and tight end Tony Livingston. They've got some guys banged up. And, again, I think that's one of those things that just kind of hangs over the head a little bit. In addition to all of this gossip about what's happening behind the scenes at Florida, you've got a struggling football team that is also beat up. And I think this is a great opportunity for Mississippi State to go in there and get the 5th victory. And that's the thing that I think about rejuvenating this fan base. And, everybody's been pleased with progress, but everybody's like, you know what, Steve, 4 wins, not enough. You're exactly right. We need to snap that SEC losing streak. You get the win over Florida, makes you 5-2. Then you have 5 games left to get at least one more to be bowl eligible. That seems a lot more doable, right? You lose this game, you got to win 2 of the last 5. That seems possible. But, man, everything seems a lot more probable if you can take advantage of the situation in Gainesville and go get a win. And you probably give, Scott Strickland the clarity that he needs. And I'm sure, it's like, Scott is no dummy, right? I'm sure Scott understands this is going to have to be done. And if you look at the Florida schedule, as we mentioned before, this may be the perfect time to get it done. And what I mean by that is you get Mississippi State this week, and then you get the open date before you play Georgia. So if you're going to make a move, now seems to be the time to do it because you don't have another open date the rest of the year. You make a move this week, then you have 2 weeks to prepare for Georgia, but you also have a few days to kind of get your team back out of the clouds, right? You give them the opportunity to go home next weekend, let everybody love on them a little bit, and you bring them back and you get ready for Georgia. And, listen, how many times have we talked about this? I don't want the coach to ever get fired the week before we play them, right? I want to play them and then let me get fired the next week. And if you're Florida, and if I'm sitting there as Scott Strickland, it's like, okay, if I know this is going to have to be done, what's best for my program? Let's do it this weekend. And I think that's one of the reasons that sparked so much of the speculation. Is it just this perfectly seems like the right time to just go ahead and knock this thing out and then kind of move forward? Because they're staring a losing season right in the face. And if you want to salvage something of the season and breathe new life into it. Because, listen, the interim coach is not going to stay on as the head coach. May stay on another position. But the reality of it is if you want to find a way to get to a bowl game, you want to find a way to reinvigorate your fan base, you make the coaching change. You make the coaching change. You remember, again, we've discussed this before, in 2023, man, after that debacle at A&M with Arnett, get crushed in that game. And again, I blame Arnett and those guys for being stubborn. Max Johnson wasn't going to play. I had it on good authority. Shared that with the staff. We didn't even prepare for the running quarterback. We prepared for Max Johnson. I mean, what an indictment on the staff, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. But if we didn't make a move then, there would have been nobody here for the Southern Miss game or the Egg Bowl. Well, what happens? Well, you bring in Greg Knox, who is beloved here at Mississippi State. He gets a win against Southern Miss, and you head into the Egg Bowl with a chance to get bowl eligible. And then you guys, who are so awesome, are like, hey, you know what? Zach's out of the way. I know this is not going to continue. I'm going to come support my kids. I'm going to come support my team. I'm going to come support my university. It would be a similar situation at Florida. All the people that have kind of withdrawn their support, even if it's just attendance-wise, they would say, you know what? This is for Florida. This is for the Gators. This is for the blue and orange. These are for these kids. And it's not their fault that they had a bad coach. So, yeah, we're going to go pack out Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. And so, again, it makes a lot of sense. But I would just be careful about which report maybe I ran with, right? I understand the framework of all this. And listen, as I've shared with you guys before, even on this show, we get tipped off from time to time too that, something is afoot. And it's always good for the university to kind of get out first, right? To set the edge on the narrative. It'd be the same thing for Scott Strickland in Florida. And so I just want you guys to be aware this is a great opportunity for Mississippi State, but don't believe everything you read. It may work out the way people forecast, but I don't think that decision's been made yet. But I know Scott Strickland is a very intelligent individual, and I'm sure Scott's already thinking kind of if then. If this happens, this is what we're going to do, But, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. If you know you're going to have to fire him, it makes a lot of sense to do it this week with the open date next week. It makes perfect sense in many respects. If you hadn't done so, come float with us at True Rest Float Spa Starve. I want to spend a little time talking about this today. Guys, I'm a guy that runs wide open all the time. And sometimes much to, it's adverse to my health sometimes, the hours that I keep. But nothing has done more for my anxiety and the quality of sleep than floating. The very first time I floated was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's one of the only good memories I have out there. And I bought a franchise. And I thought, you know what, Dana was looking to get out of travel nursing, thank God. And but she wanted to stay in wellness. And I went and floated. And I said, it's like almost like God told me, this is it. And so the very next day, I emailed True Rest. I called my lawyer, my banker, my accountant, and said, hey, this is what I want to do. Everybody gave me the thumbs up. She wakes up after sleeping all day from working all night, and I says, hey, just so you know, True Rest is ready to come to Mississippi. And I talked to everybody involved, and we're going to do our due diligence if you're interested. And, of course, I don't think she believed me, but we made it happen. We made it happen, and we brought this great business to Starkville, and we've helped a lot of people. We really have. And matter of fact, I just talked to her, and I thought, well, we'll never have people floating at 8:30 at night because the last float starts at 8:30, and you get on out of there. But we got 4 people tonight floating, and it's been busy. It has been. Ball game weekends, I'm going to encourage you. You need to book in advance. Sometimes you show up midweek. We may be able to accommodate you with a walk-in, but weekends especially, you need to book. So you can download the True Rest app, and of course the new website's coming out tomorrow, I believe, at TrueRest.com. You can learn more about it. And if you got questions, just call Dana. She'll answer your questions, 662-268-7601. It's her baby, and she loves it. She really doesn't want me up there much, unless I'm bringing coffee or food, And I'm kidding, but yeah, it's her thing. And, we're proud to be part of something that brings benefit to the quality of life to our neighbors and friends. And we want you to be a part of that too. So if you're a person that suffers with chronic pain or anxiety, or you just need a mental reset, we may be able to help you. We've helped many others, including myself. And Dana floats once, twice a week. And she's, used to be a trail runner and developed some low back pain, and now she doesn't have that, So, again, you've tried a lot of other remedies, and I would encourage you to try this one. It has worked wonders for me. I don't float enough, and I can always tell when I need to go. Dana can tell too. She goes, you need to come float. Because it affects my moods. It does. And sometimes it's just, stress is a killer, guys. It is. And my life is so much more serene and stress-free after a float. And I find myself, I got a little bit of a hot foot sometimes, when I get out on the interstate. But it's like when I drive after floating, sometimes I'm 5 miles under the speed limit. We had a friend of ours went and floated, needed to float, is having some back trouble. And I saw him at walk-ons for the coaches show. And he goes, man, I think I drove 30 miles an hour the whole way here. It's nice to have something to kind of slow life down for you. And so, again, you can just call Dana, speak with her. If you want more information, visit TrueRest.com. And certainly follow us on socials. And, the holidays will be coming up. And even if you think, hey, maybe this isn't for me, maybe it's for somebody else, and you can buy them a package. You can buy them a float. Your first floats are $65, and you get a full hour. And you get the oxygen bar with it. I mean, it's a whole experience, but it's a great opportunity for you to do something very unique and do something for yourself. Also, visit DutyNobleBook.com. Very happy to say the dude has been on the Mississippi bestseller list for a full year. And that is incredible to me. It truly is. It truly, truly is. Flim Flam wasn't on there that long. And Flim Flam, again, one of the best-selling books I've ever written. But it's pretty crazy. There have been times I've had 3 books on the bestseller list at once. But this one means a little more to me, because I think it's one of the most important books that's been written about Mississippi State. I'm not too proud to say that, and I'm so grateful that the Noble family entrusted me with the opportunity to tell that story. So go to DutyNobleBook.com. You get signed copies of The Dude or all my sports titles, including Flim Flam, Alpha Dog, Stark Villains, Dog Pile, and When the Bottom Falls, the personal memoir. If you're in recovery or know somebody that is or needs to be, perhaps buy that for them. And come check us out at genespage.com. You can get the 30% discount right now. But if you want to get the Paramount Plus add-on, just don't take the promo code. You just say, or you can just call customer service and say, I want to subscribe. And you're immediately, once you're signed up, you're immediately eligible to get all of Paramount Plus's programming for free. I'm right now, I've already started season 3 of Tulsa King with Sylvester Stallone. I absolutely love it, man. I do. The Landman is returning in November. I'm excited about that. I got to get all this stuff knocked out with Tulsa King before the Landman comes, right? Right? Billy Bob Thornton, man, we love Billy Bob, right? If you've seen the first season, you know what I'm talking about. And so you owe it to yourself to be a part of that. So that's something that's a unique add-on when you're a subscriber to genespage.com. All right, until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.